Hi, everyone. Welcome to the podcast, Risk For Heartbreak. I am your host, Christina, and I'm so glad you decided to join me today. For those of you who are new here, I pray you find value in at least one thing I say today. And to my old and faithful returning crew, you know just how much I appreciate you. So, without further ado, let's jump into it. It's impossible to build with a breaker. That was a tweet that I read last week on the first installment of Builders, Breakers, and Engineers. And Which One Are You? By Darren E. Short. He's a guy that I follow on Twitter. And I have to say, this is a sentiment that I actually agree with. And in this episode, we are going to discuss exactly why. Now, last week, I shared a story about a little boy, Miles, that I used to nanny and homeschool, who in his early stages of life, he was very much a natural breaker. And I also spoke about the shift that happened in him upon reaching his terrific 2s and then turning 3. And there was just multiple shifts that he went through. Now, it didn't take a lot of time to see this shift because his parents and myself were very much on it, okay? With careful attention and nurturing, he became this child who was able to appreciate the things and the people around him in a very different way. He began learning the importance of being conscientious and how to appreciate the things that he and others create, or what I described in the last episode as what was built, okay? Proverbs 27:6 says, "Train up a child in the way that he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." Now, there's much that I can say about that, but I think you guys know what that means. Miles went from being this unconscious destroyer to a conscious destroyer, or a breaker, to an engineer of his things and his relationships. He learned the importance of building up and innovating, and those moments were training lessons for his future relationships. When you look around, you can tell when there are people who have never really grasped how to appreciate, how to build or rebuild, how to engineer, innovate with something that belongs to them and or something that is within their sphere. And perhaps they weren't all encouraged to make mistakes, get messy, and subsequently shown the best way to clean that up or to not make the mess at all. Some people just were not shown when they were children. This later translates into everything that they do, but I really wanted to speak especially about this quote that I saw on Twitter, which is in reference to trying to build with someone who is a breaker. It's actually really, really hard. And I think that this analogy may be helpful in vetting people that you are trying to connect with or that you are already connected with. And no matter the style of relationship, I think that this applies and may help you also to better recognize how you are able to serve people in your life and how exactly they should be serving you as well. So today I want to explore how the builder, breaker, and the engineer show up in adult form relationships. So let's relate. I want to make this as succinct as possible because you guys know I am a talker, so let's just jump right in. The first question that I want to answer is, what does a builder act like in a relational situation? A builder is going to have a really strong sense of imagination. They're going to have strong ideations, and that means that when you meet them, they're probably already going to have really strong convictions about who they are and probably have a very broad scope of things that they can imagine, very vivid imagination. And some of the stuff might seem quite randomized and unconnected if they are sharing their thoughts with you, but to them, it's not chaos. Everything makes sense. They can take rudimentary parts and bits and bobs of nothing and create something amazing from those pieces just because they want to. And this means that they probably will take a liking to a lot of people. They're not going to have a lot of enemies or anything like that. Everyone is likable because all people are necessary and important, and all resources are usable, even the resources of people, and nothing goes to waste. No child's left behind. Nothing needs to be discarded. Now, I remember back in my early 20s when I was doing some smaller scale print modeling and fitness. I do fitness and fashion modeling. Actually, I was doing runway, which is surprising because I'm only 5'2", but it was very small scale. Anyway, long story short, I was working with a photographer who wanted me to take some raw materials and create something from them. So it was like a recycling campaign kind of thing. And so I gathered a few of my old 17 magazines that I used to get when I was a teenager, and I pulled all the pages out and I rolled these pages up. And I mean, it was probably like 100 pieces. I literally was rolling forever. And what I did was I hot glued them onto this pink ribbon and made this beautiful tutu skirt. Okay. It was a short skirt that flared out like this. It had a really tight pink ribbon as the waist, and it was amazing. And then I created a tube top out of magazine pages, and a necklace that was made with like, I think just string or twine or something like that, and soda can tabs, like the little, tabs at the top. Now, this simple creation was one of hundreds, literally, that span over different mediums within my life, of crafting to designing pageant and prom dresses to writing, and so many more ways that I've been able to create, including this podcast. And for me as a builder, there is really no responsibility to create with this sort of grandiose purpose attached to my creation, because there is just a genuine love for the journey more than there is a destination in mind. And for that reason, a builder is a great complement to other types of people inherently, but alone or paired with other builders could get a little tricky, right? You might see some friction or even a lack of motion around tasks, probably that should have a bit more executive effort behind them. I don't know if you've ever have been on a group project where there are two people that are the clear ideators. They have lots of things to say, okay? They are spewing all their ideas, and it's a little bit like being in a kitchen with two chefs, right? You have these two builders that are barking their best plans at the rest of the group, and you're just kind of caught in the middle of it all. But they don't really know how to execute it. They just know how to tell you the idea, so you have to execute it. The builder that is with another builder doesn't have to be a bad recipe, but it could cause some friction. And if neither one of them is able to problem solve or concede, doesn't have a strong suit for either of those, it's definitely going to be really hard to get anywhere. A builder, though they have many positive attributes, can also be really married to their creations. They don't necessarily want to see them dismantled or look like something that they didn't create. They may not want it to look like anything that they didn't mean for it to look like in particular, right? I remember feeling distraught each time I was building my towers and my creations with Miles's blocks, and he would just crash them, and I felt that way because before he found appreciation for creation, he loved destruction more than anything. So each tower that I made, each house, each mansion for his cars or whatever I was making, he would crash it, okay? That was his favorite word, crash, right? And they were obliterated before I could even say ta-da. It was really beautiful though, because that little breaker taught me not to get married to anything, and that temporary can still be just as beautiful as longer lasting things. The same goes for relationships. Some people come through like a wrecking ball to teach us something about how we cleave to love versus how we should just allow it. They teach us that true love isn't restrictive or suffocating, but given the space to be, it can flourish. And if it is meant to manifest into a more permanent structure in your life, it will be done at the hands of an engineer who knows how to recognize or vet the right materials to make that possible. But with a builder only, it's hard because they can only just see as far as what's in front of them. A breaker, like I said in the last episode on Builders and Breakers, they come in like this wrecking ball. Breakers have a very simple mindset, and that is to shake some things up. This relational archetype will definitely disrupt your life flow, and they may even call out patterns in your life that do not necessarily serve you in hopes that you will break those patterns. Now, this could be a good thing and a bad thing, of course. They may have the ability to recognize unproductive and unfruitful behaviors in you, and they may call it out, or their presence may be the very thing that kind of shakes those things up for you. I was reading a Twitter post. As you know, it's one of my favorite things to do every day. It's like coffee and Twitter as my newspaper. And OP writes, the love of your life can sometimes be the person who triggers every unhealed part of you and makes you question the entire architecture of your existence. They may even do things that are not deliberate, because sometimes their mere existence or their mere presence, that's what it says, unlocks wounds within you that you didn't even know were still inside of you. This is by She Drinks Water. There's a couple bits of paraphrasing in there. Nonetheless, these people don't have to be the love of your life for this to be true. This applies to any style of relationship that you are in with another person. My therapist speaks about this as well. He says that there are some issues that we have that will only really be addressed within a relational setting with another person, because it really takes another person to uproot those things that may actually be a disservice to you, maybe harming you, maybe hurtful to you or others, right? And it takes another person to reflect that back to you. And I think about breakers like any other construction machine, but specifically like an excavator. Excavators have this ability to break up hard ground and dig things up, and their primary job is earth moving, right? They move the earth, so they can literally move the foundation beneath you. So let's discuss the negativity of that briefly. A breaker, if not a person who is actively working on or has worked on themselves, can really be a great source of contention in your life. This type may not know how to cultivate peace in situations of discord between you two. They may feed into it, actually. They may be seeking to hurt you because their sole mission is to break things up, right? To make you hurt, make you feel. And obviously, this is them trying to reconcile certain things in their life, but we don't have time to go into the reasons why. There's this essence, though, of a certain grouping of people that are quickly triggered. These people are breakers. They throw tantrums. They're extremely dramatic or theatrical. They're unable to kind of keep the peace between themselves and others, always bothered by something, always angry about something. They're nihilistic, pessimistic, fatalistic, and outright hard to be around. If they cannot experience joy and happiness, then no one around them can either. The breaker comes in to work like a wrecking ball every single day, their essence sort of appearing into the room before they even clock in for their shift. And the atmosphere around them just kind of is damaged as a result of that. A breaker will also be unbothered by how their presence bothers you, because their purpose is not to reflect back to you, it's to impose themselves on others. And I do think that this could be, it's not always, but it could be a defense mechanism. It's a way to keep themselves safe. And, while knowing all of that, when we become adults, we still have to be responsible for how we're showing up. So yes, as a child, these may be things that are not as easily controlled because of the lack of experience and maturity. You don't have those things on your side, but when you become older, you do have to take care of these things. Now, I agree with OP in the original post that said it is impossible to build with a breaker. I wholeheartedly agree, because they aren't really interested in building or creating or innovating or engineering something, or even as simple as just imagining. They are interested in seeing the things that have already been imagined, have already been erected, torn down. Be careful of a person that shows up as this archetype of the breaker. They often have really deep wounds that need tending to, but they won't allow anyone close enough to help them through that, which could lead to your ultimate suffering and your heartbreak. Now, this is something that I can now see clear as day, but I didn't used to be able to see that. I used to try to help those who I saw were breakers because I wanted them to imagine their lives differently. I wanted them to see the light. But when you do that, without help and with someone who is unwilling, you are unnecessarily putting yourself in the path of deep heartbreak and destruction. So please be careful with that. The breaker will need God. Right? As much as we think we can do it, they need God, but they won't seek God because that would mean that they have to face ugly and scary, ungoverned things about themselves. That means that they would have to submit to authority and responsibility. And sometimes people with this particular archetype don't want that, right? They want to be able to be out on their own, be their own authority, submit to no one, right? This rebellious kind of nature, but it's hurtful to people. The breaker simply wasn't nurtured to appreciate the discomfort of vulnerability and the spectrum of expression that we have available to us. They were only left to cope, to break and break some more, and no one ever taught them how to care for their things and other people's things. The word says in Proverbs 27:15, a continual dripping on a rainy day and a quarrelsome wife are alike. Proverbs 22:15 says, folly is bound up in the heart of a child, but the rod of discipline drives it far from him. The rod of discipline doesn't always have to be physical abuse, okay? The rod of discipline can be parameters. The rod of discipline is love. It's nurturing. It's caring enough to step in and redirect as much as you need to. A breaker, if not aware of their strength, will not be able to use their ability in a productive way relationally. And unfortunately, they will break you and everyone in their way as well, because they have either only ever been broken and not helped to healing, or they were never taught how to care for people and their things. However, an engineer is going to have the ability to also build and break. Engineers have a great ability to create something with a service and reason attached to it, kind of dismantling what does not work along the way and then innovating on top of that for what does work. And they also will have a really strong sense of execution and typically will be less of a thought leader and more of a get it done type of person. Now, there's nothing wrong if you are a thought leader and you can execute, but man, it's a rare type, okay? It's a rare type. Because problem solving is one of their strengths, an engineer would make a great relational partner of any facet. Problems that you encounter with this type of person won't be detrimental to them. It won't be an end of the world event, or should I say, they will have better judgment because their exposure to building and breaking and innovating will help them to really know, is this an end of the relationship crisis or just a hiccup, right? Something that can be worked through. An engineer is likely to apply their analytical and practical strengths more so than being guided by, like the builder, an emotional inspiration that really amounts to nothing. The engineer is going to be more stable-minded as well. They're going to be reliable, non-whirlwindy. You might even say that they're predictable, or maybe you can anticipate them. And I don't know about you, but there is such a security in being able to anticipate how someone is going to show up, because they show up the same way. They have integrity. They show up the same way, regardless of the way the world is moving and shaking around them. There's this level of certainty that comes with a relational partner that you can anticipate. You can look forward to them. You can build with them. You can have tough conversations with them and go through life's going ons and still rebuild and still innovate and have stability together. They will know how to tear things down, of course, within your relationship that are a hindrance to you both. And they will want to rebuild what is conducive to your relational success as well. An engineer is a simple person to define, but really I think that they're quite rare to come by in the wild. Now, I do believe some of these people do exist from child rearing, right? They were nurtured to become these engineers early on, and you can tell by their adeptness. Not only do they act as engineers in their own personal lives, but everyone around them also is probably an engineer as well. They can only ever associate with those kinds who kind of think and move on the same level. And a great way to recognize an engineer is by looking at how they govern themselves while they're solo. How do they treat others in service positions? What is their general commentary on life? We all have one. Some of us have a brighter commentary than others. Some of us are, oh, woe is me. I know I'm a heavy griever. My commentary about the world is generally hopeful, but I grieve intensely. So what is their disposition? Is it, oh, woe is me? Do they maybe rather carry a faithful optimism while also being grounded? Do they have ways to encourage themselves when things aren't going well, when things are breaking up around them? Are they submitted to God so that they have somewhere to look to, somewhere that they can receive guidance from, right? Is the person able to submit, and in their submission show their prowess within their world that God has given them dominion over? I think that's a really big one, because we think that submission, I don't, but there are people in the world that think submission means you're weak. They think that it is a weakness to submit, whether it's a man to a woman, woman to man, woman to woman, man to man, right? They think it's a weakness to have a headship, to have leader, to have a covering over them, versus that being protection so that they can go out and properly steward what was given to them. We all need that. We all need protection. We all need someone watching over us, advising us, and engineers are definitely going to have advisory. They're going to have teams around them of people that they can draw from. And engineers never alone, though they may be solo. A few Bible verses that I want to use to support this, and we'll get out of here, is Proverbs 17:17. A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. Proverbs 27:17 says, iron sharpens iron, and one man sharpens another. And Ecclesiastes 4:9-12, this is a longer one. Two are better than one, because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him who is alone when it rains and has no one to lift him up. Again, if two lie together, they keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, two will withstand him. A threefold cord is not quickly broken. I believe everyone has the capacity truly to show up as an engineer in their world and in their relationships. And even if they were not nurtured this way, I think we can come into adulthood as soon as we are able and ready to become aware and conscious of how we are showing up, and uprooting, excavating the subconscious, and healing through some things that are preventing us from living the spectrum that God has so beautifully blessed us with. I believe that's possible for all of us, but it really has to be an active choice to assert our lives and our relationships in a way that a builder does, but with more groundedness, and the way that a breaker does, with more kindness and intention for success. There has to be preparation, there has to be practicality, there has to be planning, and I think most importantly, there has to be an anchor to a purpose or a service for others versus just lonely expression, personal expression for themselves. I think a builder is definitely capable of breaking some of their beloved creations and detaching from their perfect ideals and seeing what that might inspire in them to do next. But just like the builder, the breaker can admire the creation before breaking it, and perhaps choose a different approach, one that allows them to innovate versus totally annihilating. They can allow others to show up as they are without needing to break them down to appease their discomfort. Breakers are capable of seeing contents of what once was and innovating from the rubble that they made. Using those skills, right, to help others get free of things that maybe were holding them back from getting messy and making mistakes, which we know, of course, is a very prime source of our learning as children. Do you guys remember the magic school bus? The engineer is a person who has been fully realized in both veins. They have exercised their strength in each and every area. And then they were taught how to best and most usefully source, parts of those each to create a human that has duality, that has dimension, that has flexibility, that's pliable, and best of all, has real conviction, because they know what it's like to be on both sides. They aren't neutral. They're not fence straddling. They have a pliability to go between as necessary, exercising the full scope of who God created them to be. An engineer is the one you can build with. You can't build with the breaker. I know that for sure. I encourage you to think about which archetype resonates most with you without choosing the one that you want to be, but rather really being honest today. Which one are you? Because it's really not a condemnation on or a judgment on you. It's just recognizing who you show up as and then using that to build within your relationships. That means pairing up with people who have strengths that you don't and weaknesses that you don't. It means exercising, letting go of what doesn't serve you or serve a purpose, should I say, and then cleave to the things that do serve a purpose. And as always, I want you guys to remember to love yourself first so that you can then go and love your neighbor. Until next time.